Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, digging into the Rudy Gobert on-off numbers, the impact on the Timberwolves defense. Could we see rookie Joan Beringer at some point during the upcoming road trip? Which related, the upcoming schedule is very, very soft for the Antless Timberwolves. What will this look like a couple of weeks from now? Can Minnesota do better than just hold their own against some of these supposedly inferior teams? It's all upcoming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday. Happy weekend, everybody. The Timberwolves do not play again until tomorrow night. They get 2 consecutive off days for the first time since the regular season started. We get Wolves-Hornets tomorrow night. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show today. A Hornets team that started the season very hot offensively, but has been blown out a couple of times here recently. So we'll dig into that matchup a bit later. But I want to start today with we'll call it the Gobert problem. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because even that is kind of a loaded statement, because there's certainly been elements of the Wolves that are much better with Rudy Gobert on the floor so far this year, but it is a problem because they're so bad defensively with him off and so bad offensively with him on. And then we get to the end of the Lakers game the other night when Austin Reeves beats him and Gobert just doesn't get to the right spot and can't move laterally quickly enough to shut down Reeves in a pivotal moment. Like what's next for the Rudy Gobert problem, the on-off stuff with Rudy Gobert? We'll talk through some of those numbers. Could we see Joan Beringer at some point during the upcoming road trip? We'll talk about the upcoming favorable schedule, the NBA Cup, ESPN's power rankings, and also that Hornets matchup. A lot to get to on the show here today. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. You can watch on YouTube. You can listen anywhere you get your podcasts. All right. So the reason why I call this the Gobert problem is clearly Gobert has not played well yet this season. His best game was the victory that they had on Sunday, the front end of the back-to-back. And it was that was the win over the Pacers, right? The to that point winless Indiana Pacers. It was still a closer game than it probably should have been. So the Wolves have 2 4-point wins this year, and then they have 2 double-digit losses, and then the buzzer beater loss to the Lakers. I would point out Portland is, I think, very likely better than a lot of people thought they'd be. They are 3-2. They've got a +5 differential. They've won a couple games straight. Like, they're a decent team. So let's not completely discount that loss on the road for Portland's home opener. But all that to say, Gobert hasn't played great so far this year. That Pacers game where he had like 18 rebounds, like that was great. Besides that, it's been rocky. And we could point to the final play of the Lakers game, the Austin Reeves buzzer beater, where Gobert, I know Chris Finch took blame for saying they should have been switching, and I kind of questioned that immediately on the postgame podcast as well. As like, hey, what's the idea of this coverage here? Are we really trying to hedge and recover? It wasn't really a drop. It was like a weird, like he was kind of playing at the level, but then he wasn't able to flip his hips quickly enough to get lateral and stay in front of Reeves. In reality, they should have switched it, or they should have just blitzed it, right? Or even dropping would have made more sense, because if you drop, like, you might have given him an open jumper, but you're up 1. So like, he's not looking for a 3-pointer, and you'd rather have him shoot a semi-open 3 than a basically uncontested floater, right? Anyway, the point is that was a bad play. Gobert's had some bad defensive moments, and he obviously hasn't been very good offensively. But then you look at the numbers, and they actually are still really good with him on the floor on the defensive end. The on-off is a 99th percentile defense with Gobert on the floor, but a 3rd percentile offense with him off the floor, according to Cleaning the Glass. And the problem then becomes very clearly twofold, right? We talked about this a week ago after the first couple games of the season. It was, hey, how do we fix the Gobert-less defense, right? How could this defense be better with Gobert off the floor? It's only, 18-ish minutes a game, plus or minus. Like, how do the Wolves kind of cover that up? Well, now, how can they fix their offense with him on the floor? Both things are problems. And I think that'll come around a little bit to some extent because I don't know that Gobert has been that much worse offensively. I think some of that's fluky. The actual offensive numbers, we're still talking just 5 games into the season. I think the bigger concern to me is still the defense with him off the floor. And the Gobert problem itself, like, is Gobert a step slower? Is he injured? Is he working himself back into shape? Remember a couple of years ago when he was banged up? I guess it was 3 years ago, his first year at the Wolves, and he just didn't play well for the first half of the season and actually really the whole season as a whole. And then he was very good each of the last 2 seasons. In this offseason, remember, he didn't play Eurobasket. And the hope was he'd be healthier. Well, my theory, this is completely just a theory, but if you remember, it looked a little clunky early last season too. Gobert looked a half step slow, and he ended up maybe being just a quarter step slower, right? That's how I like to frame this. I think when it was all said and done, Gobert was still very good defensively last year, just not quite as good as the year before. Right now, he looks a full step slower. And the hope is he's still really only a quarter step slower than he was last year, which would still, it's not great, but he's headed in that direction. Father Time is undefeated, that whole thing. He's a big guy. It's a thing we got to look out for. But he shouldn't be this much worse in terms of his lateral movement and what he's contributing when he's on the floor. So I'm not pulling the fire alarm yet because we're 5 games in, and I think it's like last year where he's got to play himself into actual game shape. Not that he's not in shape, but some of these guys need to get into the rhythm of getting a little bit fatigued in season, recovering, and whatever their routine is. And that's my theory right now for Gobert. I'm not saying he's not going to be a quarter step slower than he was last year. I just hope he's not a full step slower, right? I'm using that, of course, as a very unscientific measurement, but I kind of mean it literally defensively, right? Like he was basically a full step slow on the Austin Reeves play at the end of the game. And if he was a 3/4 of a step quicker, it might have turned out differently. Maybe there's a better contest. Maybe he gets in front of Reeves, I don't know. So that's the two pieces, right? Is Gobert ultimately going to be a little bit better? And even right now, the defensive numbers overall, despite some individual moments like that, are okay with him on the floor. But the offense without him, the offense with him and the defense without him are big problems. The defense without him, in my mind, I think now is the right time to consider adding in Joan Beringer. And I know we're only 5 games in, and I know he's only, 20, and I know he has only played basketball for 4 years or whatever. I get it. And I'm not saying throw him out there against Jokic. They didn't do that, right? I'm saying throw him out there against the Charlotte Hornets. I feel like he can handle, whichever Plumlee is Mason Plumlee. I guess he's not really the rotation for them, but they're bigs, right? He can handle Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think he can hold his own there. I think he could hold his own against Moussa Diabate. I think this is the right opponent to trot him out and kind of see what happens. And we're going to talk about the schedule here in a little bit. I mean, then they play the winless Brooklyn at the moment. Brooklyn's 0-5. They play Brooklyn Monday night. And that's another team I think you could play him against. I don't know that you play him against the Knicks and their bigs next Wednesday. I think it's completely situational at this point. And as long as you are up front as a coaching staff and have that conversation with Beringer and say, hey, look, you're not going to play every single night. We're going to find spots to get you 10 minutes here and there. Like 10 minutes of him against Charlotte, how much fun would that be? To see Beringer chasing LaMelo Ball down in the open floor. Like the Charlotte offense against Joan Beringer would be a lot of fun. And I truly believe he can have a positive impact on this team with Gobert off the floor. And that's one solve here. Schematically, I don't know that there's anything else I would do dramatically different when Gobert is on the floor. He simply has to play better. Maybe they switch a little bit more. Maybe they do some stuff to kind of like tweak around the edges. They played actually a decent amount of zone that helped them get back into the game against the Lakers. Perhaps it's that, maybe not against Charlotte, but against Brooklyn, certainly you could break out that zone. I wouldn't do it against the Knicks, but maybe there's more zone. Maybe there's more switching. Maybe there's Beringer when Gobert's off the floor. Like I think all of those things are reasonable potential pieces of a solution to improve this defense. And I know it's not like, I still think the biggest thing is the effort level. And I know that that's not like a precise answer that people don't want to hear that, but like they're not going to dramatically change their defensive coverages unless they tweak it a little bit depending on the opponent, which I think is in play. I think that makes a lot of sense. But against a team like Charlotte, Charlotte's a good offensive team. They just have to be more solid. And then, of course, the defensive rebounding, which is always kind of up and down. That's a piece of it too. To me, though, it's the Gobert on-off stuff that's so dramatic that needs to be really kind of dug into. I mean, the defense without Gobert is giving up, according to Cleveland Glass, 142.1 points per 100 possessions. That's insane. Opponents are shooting 65% effective field goal percentage and getting 41% offensive rebound rate with Gobert off the floor. That's insane. And part of that's Naz Reid's got to rebound better. Part of it is the guards, the wings have to rebound better. And part of it is I think they've got to play another big. I think Beringer has to be given an opportunity here at some point in the near future. All right. I want to talk about the schedule. I want to talk about ESPN's power rankings. We'll talk about the matchup against the Hornets. A lot to get to still. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Lockdown Wolves is brought to us by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. The NBA season is heating up just over a week and a half in, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for the highlights of your fantasy team or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the bag drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game this year, DoorDash will drop 50% of your order with Dash Pass the next day, and you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff that you'll actually want. Plus, DoorDash is awesome in that it's not just food, although I will say, I'm not joking. I am actually waiting for DoorDash order. When I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to have DoorDash delivering food to my house. I wasn't able to wait for the 50-point game, although there have been a lot of 50-point games so far this season. We've had Austin Reeves. We've had there's like 4 guys that have. Markkanen's had a 50-point game already this season. Next time someone goes off for 50, use promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass, plus your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only. 50% off up to $10 a day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. All right, so the Timberwolves are without Anthony Edwards for at least another week and a half. It looks like early next week is when he's supposed to be reevaluated. So obviously not playing in Charlotte. I would not at all expect him to play in Brooklyn on Monday. Perhaps he's being reevaluated. I don't know if he'll be on the road trip, but a week from when they made that announcement would be Monday, which is at Brooklyn. The kind of assumption based on what Shams Charania and John Krasinski reported is probably about 2 weeks. So if we assume 2 weeks, that means he's missing the next 5 games. 2 weeks from the day he was initially diagnosed would be the second end of a back-to-back at Utah. So for the sake of argument, let's say he misses that game too. The next 6 games are against Charlotte, Brooklyn, New York, Utah, Sacramento, and Utah again. Think about that. Sacramento is 1-4. Utah is 2-2 and actually has a pretty good differential, but they're not supposed to be good this year. Brooklyn is 0-5. The Knicks have struggled a little bit. They're 2-2 right as of this recording. Although, are they playing right now? No, they're not playing right now. They're 2-2 as of this recording. And who else? I think that was it. Utah, Sacramento, Utah twice, Sacramento, Brooklyn, New York. Oh, and Charlotte, who is 2-3 and has been blown out a couple of times recently, including last night, Thursday night. They got beat by Orlando by 16 points. So all games that with Ant, they would be favored in, except for probably at the Knicks. I think the Knicks would be favored in that game, but they would definitely be favored at Charlotte, at Brooklyn, home for Utah, and at Sacramento with Anthony Edwards. So if we look at those 6 games, And by the way, after that, so that's a back-to-back at Sacramento, at Utah next Sunday and Monday, which would be just about 2 weeks after the injury. There's always a chance he doesn't play in Sacramento and does play at Utah. They don't play again until Friday that week. So they actually have 3 straight off days: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So he could play, get 3 days to recuperate before he comes back to play at home for a 4-game homestand on Friday, November 14th. Or they just give him both of those days, and his first game back isn't until Friday against the Kings, which gives him 2.5, nearly 3 full weeks off with the post-injury. So I think that's probably the most likely scenario. But then again, Ant is Ant, so who knows? All that to say, like, even without Ant, I bet they're still favored home for Utah, at Brooklyn, and I'll look and see. I don't think there's a line yet for at Charlotte, but I bet they're still favored in half of those games. Realistically, they've got to go 4-2. If they go 4-2 in those 6 games, that puts them at 6-5 before Ant would potentially come back home for Sacramento for a 4-game homestand. That's tough. Sacramento, Denver, Dallas, and Washington. Obviously, they'll be favored against Sacramento and Washington with Ant and probably Dallas. But it'd be nice to have him back for those Western Conference games, for the Denver game, especially, well, actually Denver and Dallas both, just for future tiebreaker, et cetera. Like, it'd be really nice to have Ant back for those games. But these are extremely winnable games for Minnesota. And having Anthony Edwards back for them, like, on the one hand, it's great that it's this time of year that Ant's hurt and the schedule's this easy, because it gets a lot tougher later and there's less back-to-backs now and the whole thing. On the flip side, these are games that with Ant, I would be sitting here saying they better go 6-0 over their next 6, especially if they're 2-3 or 5-1, right? Like, it would be completely reasonable. I mean, my bold prediction before the season, based on how easy the schedule looked, was that on the first of the year, I'm going to pull the exact record out. I think I had them with 7 losses on January 1st, if I'm not mistaken. Where did I put my bold predictions? I thought they were in this notes document, but I had them at like a crazy record on the first of the year, because the schedule early this season really is that easy. It's a very reasonable schedule early in the season. So anyway, I can't find it, but I had them at like a crazy record on January 1st, and it's still possible because the schedule is that easy. With no exaggeration, we should also talk about the NBA Cup, because those games start here very shortly, and are part of the upcoming, stretch of games. And the Timberwolves group in the Western Conference includes the Thunder, Kings, Jazz, and Suns. So some of these games are upcoming, are Cup games. And according to ESPN, the Thunder are a 66% chance to win the group. Not surprising. The Wolves are listed as the contender at 17%. And then the Kings, Jazz, and Suns are at 8%, 5%, and 4% respectively. And it says the group looks this is according to ESPN, Kevin Pelton, the group looks atypically weak, with Edwards likely to miss at least the opening game with the hamstring strain. The schedule does work in the Timberwolves' favor with their matchup against OKC not until Thanksgiving Eve. Minnesota's first 2 NBA Cup games are at home, and Edwards could be back by the time they hit the road on November 21st, making getting to the finale against the Thunder at 3-0 a realistic goal. And then it says the other 3 teams in this group, the Kings, Jazz, and Suns, have a combined 1 win against teams besides each other, which was Utah's opening night blowout of the Clippers, who, of course, are good and I guess are still just 2-2, but was still a shocking result. Phoenix is 1-4. The Kings are 1-4. And Utah is, where'd they go? 2-2. So they'll have a shot in the NBA Cup. And having Ant back for that is going to be great. That the fact that he'll return he might only miss the first one of those games, but I thought that was notable. And then lastly, along these same lines, the ESPN NBA Power Rankings came out before the Timberwolves lost to the Luka and LeBron and Marcus Smart and insert other rotation guys here, less Lakers. It had Minnesota at 10, down from 7 the previous week, and now they've lost to the Lakers. So if they beat Charlotte and Brooklyn, I bet they're still hovering around number 10 early next week when ESPN releases their next batch of power rankings, but it had them behind the 4-0 Sixers and just ahead of the, at the time, 1-2 Rockets. The Rockets are one of those teams I thought I took the under on before the season. They are just 2-2, but they have a differential plus 10 so far this season, which obviously it's really early to hang too much on that, but I thought that was notable. Let's close by looking at the Wolves-Charlotte matchup. We'll get Wolves-Hornets tomorrow night. We'll talk about what they've done so far this season and what to look out for in this matchup We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Trust me, it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making the late push. Look ahead to Sunday in the NFL. The Packers are 13.5-point favorites at home against Carolina. I saw some stat. They're like 20-1 at home straight up when they're favored by 13 or more in like the last 20 years or something like that. The Vikings, the Vikings are at the Lions and are 8.5-point underdogs with apparently J.J. McCarthy coming back. So that's interesting. I don't know that I would take the Packers minus 13.5. That's aggressive. I kind of don't mind the Vikings plus 8.5 at the Lions. I feel like that'll probably be a close game. The Lions have been really good lately, but that's an interesting line. So I'd definitely look at that. But again, live betting is a ton of fun. Same game parlays, the whole thing. You can do all of it. And of course, not just NFL either. Now that basketball is going, you look at the basketball slate this weekend as well. Check that out. It keeps every game exciting, especially when it's your team. If it's the Vikings, the Timberwolves, and your team's making a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, this Charlotte matchup. So the Hornets played on Thursday night, so they'll have a 1 day of rest in between. The Timberwolves will have had 2. They were at home as well, so Charlotte will be waiting for Minnesota. They lost to Orlando, who previously had been 1-4, by 16 points at home. Overall this season, the Hornets are 2-3. They've lost 2 straight, and their overall point differential is a minus 0.4. They opened the season by beating the Nets, not surprising, by 19. They lost at the Sixers by just 4, and Philly is currently undefeated. Then they beat the Wizards by 26. So they beat up big time on 2 really bad teams. They lost a close game to a presumably good team. I think the Sixers over the course of the season are going to level out a bit, but at the moment, the Sixers are good. They were absolutely blown out of the gym by 27 points to the Miami Heat on the road, and then at home by 16 to the Magic. So Charlotte's played in 5 games. 4 of them are blowouts of at least 16 points, one way or the other. And they lost the one close game they've been in. I don't know how that makes me feel. It kind of feels like this will be a close game. And Charlotte so far has been exactly what I would have expected. A really good offensive team. They play really fast, and a poor defensive team. Minnesota is let's see. I was going to pull up Minnesota's actual, at this point, their offensive ranking in the league. So Minnesota's middle of the pack offensively and bottom 5 defensively. For context, Charlotte is, according to Basketball Reference, in terms of offensive rating, Charlotte is 6th offensively and 23rd defensively. And they play fast. They're a top 5 team in pace. Minnesota's playing a little faster than they did last year, but still, I mean, they don't play fast and don't want to play fast. But Charlotte is exactly what we would have expected them to be. LaMelo Ball is scoring a bunch of points. He's shooting almost 11 threes a game and 40% from 3, 26 points a game. This is these stats, I guess, are before their loss to Orlando on Thursday night. Rookie Con Kneppel has been really good so far. Miles Bridges has been good. Colin Sexton, a newcomer to Charlotte, has been important. The front court is where they're thin. Kalkbrenner is whatever, and Diabate is whatever at this point. Like Diabate, I think, could be a pretty good rotation guy. Brandon Miller got hurt. That's a big deal. He got hurt in their second game this season, so he's going to be out. Injury-wise, he's the big one. Josh Green did not play Thursday, and I don't think would expect him to necessarily be a rotation piece for them anyway, even if he were to play, but I don't think he's going to. So all that to say, this is actually not a very good matchup for Minnesota, right? This is a team that is going to play fast. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to give up a lot of points. Minnesota, in a perfect world, would avoid that sort of getting sucked into that sort of a playing style. That is not a recipe that's very positive for Minnesota. They need to avoid getting into track meets. Minnesota last season beat the Hornets at home early in the season in a game that Miles Bridges did play, but so did LaMelo Ball in that game. Minnesota won that one by 21 points. And then they did win at Charlotte last year by 15. The year prior, I know they had some problems with LaMelo Ball and the Hornets, but last year they did beat them twice. I don't love the matchup for the Timberwolves. I do think they'll win, but I think it's going to be a challenge because of the pace that Charlotte plays with and their shot making. Guarding LaMelo Ball, like obviously that should fall to Jaden McDaniels, especially if Jalen Clark is a lot smaller than LaMelo Ball, but we'll see what the injury looks like. He, of course, has now missed 2 consecutive games, which is a little bit worrisome. As of now, the Hornets are a good offensive rebounding team as well. Kalkbrenner's really and Diabate, they're both pretty active on the offensive glass. Although overall, Gobert and Naz Reid and Julius Randle should have an advantage against them in the front court. But the Hornets have been a good rebounding team to this point, and they also do a good job at getting the free throw line, which is another thing that Minnesota has done too much of, is allowing opponents to get to the charity stripe. So Hornets play fast. They score a lot of points. They are a good offensive rebounding team and a good defensive rebounding team, and they get to the free throw line. Plus, they're second in the NBA in three-point shooting right now. They're top 10 in attempt rate. All things Minnesota struggled to deal with to this point, 5 games into the season. So for me, that's a blinking red light. It would concern me. I think Minnesota wins the game, but I think it's close. And hopefully we see some execution like we've seen. Obviously the defensive possession that Austin Reeves scored the game winner on against the Lakers was not good. But a couple of the, close late games prior to that so far this season, the Pacers game and before that, the opener against Portland, Minnesota's execution was much better than we saw at times last year. Now, both those games, well, I guess they didn't have Ant late in the Pacers game, but no Ant, of course. So ultimately, what does this look like down the stretch if it is a close game? I trust the Timberwolves to close in a close late game situation more than the Hornets. So my pick would be Minnesota wins a close game, but it's a track meet, and it's not going to make anybody feel better about the Timberwolves' struggling defense. Just know that the Hornets are a good offensive team, legitimately. They'll probably only win 28 games or something this year, whatever, but they're a good offensive team. And then they play at Brooklyn on Monday. And by that point, maybe Brooklyn's won a game. But that's obviously, like, it seems so silly to call a game on November 3rd a must win. But the Timberwolves have to win these games without Anthony Edwards. And they got to win at Brooklyn. We'll talk more about that on Monday's show. Monday will be a bit of a hybrid of we'll talk a little about the Hornets game from Saturday, and we'll get you ready for the Brooklyn game Monday night and what to look out for based on what we saw against the Hornets. That's what we'll do on Monday's show. And then we'll keep an eye on some of these different things. We'll dig into synergy next week and talk about specifically what defensive actions the Wolves are struggling the most to defend. Although right now, clearly it's pretty much everything. It's isolation of the perimeter. It's pick and roll. Like, everything's a struggle for Minnesota on the defensive end right now. But we'll dig into some of those specifics more next week as we get you ready for Wolves Nets on Monday. So, a reminder, we do the live postcast. It's our guys, Luke Inman and Jack Borman. And this season, it is on this YouTube channel, Locked On Wolves YouTube channel, live for about 20 minutes after every game. So Saturday night after Wolves-Hornets, tune in to hear those guys. I'll be back early Monday with the show, getting you ready for Wolves Nets Monday night. And then, of course, Jack and Luke will be back Monday following Wolves at Nets Monday evening. That's all I got for you today. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show. Josh Lloyd is fantastic. He hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast out there, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, this show is part of the very same podcast network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.